Those medals mean nothing now, Ava. Lily's house belongs to Daniel. Ruth Cole stood on my daughter's porch 5 days after the funeral, one hand resting on a new electronic lock. My fingers tightened around the triangular flag case until the wooden corner pressed into my palm. Behind Ruth, Lily's olive flight bag sat beside two black trash sacks. Daniel opened the door before I could answer. She finally understood that you cared more about the army than your own family. He raised a copied beneficiary form bearing Lily's name while two neighbors watched from the driveway. 6 weeks later, a major general would read one line from the real form and Daniel's attorney would slowly move his chair away. What I could not understand was why my husband expected grief to make me obedient what Lily had hidden before her last flight and how long Daniel had been waiting for my daughter's death to solve his debts. Even now, 16 months later, I keep Lily's pilot watch in my kitchen drawer and my chest tightens whenever a keypad beeps behind me. I am telling this because sorrow can leave a woman too tired to defend her own name, and someone may mistake that exhaustion for permission. So lower the lamp, pull the blanket closer, and let my voice stay with you tonight. If sleep finds you before the ending, this story will still be here tomorrow. Let me take you back 3 months. Lily was alive then, and Daniel still kissed my forehead before leaving for work. I had retired from the United States Army Nurse Corps after 26 years, most of them spent coordinating trauma care and reviewing records where one wrong digit could change a life. I could not remember every face from those years, but I remembered every missing signature. Daniel owned a small freight brokerage near Clarksville. He said business was slow but temporary, so I used $48,000 from my retirement savings to help cover payroll. He promised to repay it after Christmas. Then Christmas passed, followed by Easter, and each time I asked for statements, he kissed my hand and said I had already spent enough years worrying about numbers. Lily never trusted vague answers. She was 30, an Army helicopter pilot with a laugh that filled the hallway before she entered it. On Sundays, she brought biscuits from a gas station outside Fort Campbell and stirred gravy with the wooden spoon she had carved for me at summer camp. The handle still says Mom in letters that lean downhill. 3 months before the crash, Lily called while I was trimming roses beside the garage. Her voice sounded careful. Mom, if someone changes a beneficiary form, does the old person have to be notified? I set down the shears and asked which form. She said it was only a general question, but I heard a cabinet close behind her. Then Danielle walked into our kitchen and called my name. Lily lowered her voice. I will explain later. The call ended before I could stop her. That evening, Daniel asked what she wanted, and I told him. His spoon paused over the chili. Did she mention the house, he asked. I said no. He smiled too quickly and changed the subject. Lily died during a night training flight near the Kentucky border. The Army officer who came to my door removed his cap before saying her name. Daniel stood behind me with one hand on my shoulder, but his fingers were cold and stiff. I remember the refrigerator humming Ruth's television playing in the den, and the officer's polished shoes shining beneath our porch light. At the funeral, a young soldier placed a folded flag in my hands and said words I had heard given to other families. Hearing them from my own child changed the weight of every syllable. Daniel cried against my shoulder for the cameras, then left the reception early because he said someone needed to secure Lily's house before distant relatives began asking questions. The next morning, he placed a thick folder beside my untouched coffee. These are funeral reimbursements and release forms, he said. I had taken one tablet the doctor prescribed for sleep, and the words blurred when I looked down. Daniel uncapped a pen and tapped the last page. I told him I would read everything after breakfast. His face hardened. Ruth leaned across the table. You inspected paperwork while Lily was alive, and look how much time that stole from her. The coffee maker clicked behind her, then released one final drop into the pot. Nobody spoke for several seconds. I watched steam disappear above my cup and felt guilt enter the room like someone who already knew where to sit. I did not sign. I placed the folder in the china cabinet and locked the glass door with a tiny brass key. Daniel called that insulting. Ruth said grief had made me suspicious. By afternoon, both of them were speaking gently, as though my refusal proved I was unstable. That was the first time I understood how easily concern could be sharpened into a weapon. 5 days after the funeral, I drove to Lily's house for her pilot watch and family photographs. The dogwoods had just begun to bloom and a delivery box sat wet beneath the gutter. My key entered the front lock but would not turn. A keypad blinked red above it. Then Ruth opened the door wearing Lily's gray Academy sweatshirt. 2 neighbors stood near the driveway with their arms folded. Daniel had invited them, although he later denied it. Lily's uniforms were packed into cardboard boxes in the open garage. Her olive flight bag lay on the concrete beside trash sacks, and the wooden spoon she had carved for me rested on top of a box marked kitchen donations. Daniel handed me a copy of a beneficiary designation and said Lily had transferred the house to him before her final mission. The property was worth $840,000. He claimed she wanted him to protect it from my emotional decisions. I studied the signature. Lily always made the first stroke of her L in one motion. This one had been drawn twice. I need the original, I said. Daniel stepped between me and the doorway. You need rest. Ruth told the neighbors that military women often struggled when discipline could no longer control their lives. Her voice carried across the yard, and one neighbor looked down at his shoes, while the other pretended to examine the wet delivery box. Daniel added that I had already agreed he should manage Lily's estate. He said my memory was unreliable because of medication and grief. Then he offered to bring me photographs after he decided which ones belonged to him. For a moment, the porch seemed to tilt beneath my feet, but the flag case remained steady against my ribs. I wanted to push past him. I wanted to open every drawer and call Lily's name until the walls answered. Instead, I picked up the flight bag, the wooden spoon, and one small box of uniforms. Please, send me every document you believe she signed, I said. Daniel's shoulders dropped because he mistook control for victory. Ruth tossed my old key onto the concrete. It struck once, then spun beneath the porch chair. Those medals will not help you today, she said. I bent, retrieved the key, and placed it in my pocket beside Lily's watch receipt. The neighbors remained quiet, and somewhere inside the house a grandfather clock chimed 11 times. Lily repaired everything with white thread because that was what I kept in the kitchen drawer. The blue seam was new, uneven, and hidden beneath the inner flap. I carried the bag inside, placed it beside the folded flag, and used my smallest nursing scissors to cut 3 careful stitches. A sealed white envelope slipped onto the table. The envelope carried the stamped seal of Lily's aviation unit. On the front, in her sloping handwriting, were 11 words that made my knees press against the cabinet behind me. Mom, open this only if Daniel says I left him the house. The kitchen clock clicked behind me, but I could not move until its minute hand crossed the number 6. The white envelope stayed unopened for almost an hour. Lily had written my name the way she did as a child, with the final letter curling under itself. I sat at the kitchen table with her flight bag beside me and the folded flag across from it, while the clock moved through a morning that felt too heavy to enter. At 6:20 in the morning, my phone rang. Major General Ellen Cross introduced herself, though I knew her name from Lily's stories. She had commanded the aviation brigade during Lily's first deployment. Her voice was steady and low. "Colonel Cole Lily asked me to contact you if anyone challenged her final beneficiary paperwork." I looked at the sealed envelope. "Did she tell you what was inside?" General Cross said she did not know every detail, only that Lily had filed a new designation and requested a witness meeting. Then she gave me the sentence that carried me through the next 6 weeks. "Do not correct a liar while he is still building the record against himself." General Cross told me to photograph the envelope before opening it, record the time, and keep the original seal intact. Those instructions brought back an old part of me. For 26 years, I had taught young nurses that evidence lost its voice when people handled it carelessly. So I washed my hands, cleared the table, and began a written log. First, I photographed the front and back beside the kitchen clock. Then I called a civilian attorney named Claire Moss, whom General Cross trusted with military family estates. Claire stayed on speaker while I cut only the outer edge. Inside were 5 items: a letter from Lily, a copied beneficiary form, a receipt, a small memory card, and a list of 2 witnesses. I read the letter first. Lily wrote that Daniel had asked her several times to place the house in his name so he could use it as security for his company. She had refused. Ruth later called and said the property should remain with Daniel's side of the family because I had already received enough through my military retirement. Lily wrote that she had become worried after Daniel requested copies of her deed insurance documents and digital signature. She had changed her beneficiaries through the proper Army process, signed before 2 witnesses, and left copies with General Cross. She asked me not to confront Daniel without counsel. The final paragraph ended with, "Mom, trust the record, even if you cannot trust the people around it." Claire arrived before noon with document sleeves. She reviewed the seal, signed my evidence log, and protected each original. Then she asked whether Daniel knew about the envelope. I said no. "Then let him keep believing grief erased your training," she said. The memory card held an audio file recorded 2 weeks before the crash. Lily's voice filled my kitchen, warm and slightly impatient. She described Daniel's pressure, Ruth's phone calls, and a meeting where Daniel had placed loan papers beside her plate at a family dinner. He told her signing would save jobs. Lily said she refused because the house was her only independent asset. Then Lily mentioned a figure I had never heard before. Daniel's freight company owed $318,000 across 2 lenders and a private note. He had hidden the debt from me by routing statements to a rented mailbox. Lily discovered it when one lender mistakenly called her about property valuation. She recorded the conversation because Daniel had started denying things minutes after saying them. Claire requested emergency preservation of Daniel's business files, Lily's electronic accounts, and the county property records. By the next afternoon, we learned that $67,000 had already left Lily's personal account. The transfers began 3 hours after the Army notified us of her death. Daniel had labeled them estate expenses, but 2 went directly to his company. A second discovery was worse. Daniel had presented a beneficiary form dated 2 days before Lily died. The form transferred the house to him and gave him control over the estate. Yet the digital file had been created on his office computer 11 hours after the Army recorded Lily's death. The signature image came from an older vehicle purchase agreement. The forensic examiner enlarged both signatures on a screen. Lily's authentic L rose in one continuous stroke. The copied version had a faint square of compressed pixels around it, like a postage stamp placed over paper. Daniel had not forged her hand with a pen. He had lifted it from another document and pasted it into a form she never saw. For the next 3 weeks, I worked the way I once handled a difficult hospital review. I built one timeline and allowed no assumption to stand without support. I marked Lily's call to me, her meeting with General Cross, the filing receipt, the crash, the death notification, Daniel's account transfers, and the creation time of his false form. Daniel called twice a day at first. He asked whether I was sleeping and whether I had found a grief counselor. His concern always arrived beside a request. He wanted me to sign a waiver, release the house, and let him handle the estate privately. I told him I needed time. Each calm answer made him more confident. Then he sent an email offering $30,000 if I surrendered every claim connected to Lily's property. He described it as a compassionate settlement. Near the end, he wrote, "Lily never completed the paperwork before her final flight, so we should honor what she told me verbally." That single sentence contradicted his claim that she had signed his form. Claire printed the email and set it beside the false designation. "He just admitted the paper came later," she said. I stared at the 2 pages until the words stopped moving. Daniel had spent weeks telling everyone I was confused, yet he could not keep his own version straight for one paragraph. Lies often fail from the weight of their repairs. Ruth posted photographs from Lily's house and called it Daniel's fresh start. A lender's folder appeared open on the dining table. Records showed Daniel had already pledged the house as collateral, using the false form to delay collection on his business debt. He was selling Lily's future to purchase himself another month. What happened next is why I still keep that white envelope. So if you are folding a shirt or waiting at a red light, stay with me a little longer. Claire advised me to act as though I wanted a quiet settlement. I sent Daniel one message asking only for Lily's personal photographs and the pilot watch she wore on her first solo flight. Daniel replied within 9 minutes. He said I could have the watch after I signed his waiver. Then he attached another copy of the false form and wrote, "This is the final proof." Claire smiled without humor. The attachment preserved fresh metadata linking the document to Daniel's office account and to a scanner registered under Ruth's name. General Cross secured the official Army file, including the witness meeting identity verification and the original beneficiary designation. She would not tell Daniel what it said. Neither would I. The secret he believed he had buried remained sealed inside a government folder with 2 independent signatures and a timestamp he could not alter. At mediation, I allowed Daniel's attorney to speak first. Daniel said Lily had trusted him more than me because I had spent her childhood serving strangers. Ruth sat behind him and nodded at every sentence. I did not defend my motherhood. I only confirmed that I wanted the court to examine Daniel's document before considering mine. That choice pleased him. In the hallway afterward, Ruth touched my sleeve and said, "You still have time to avoid humiliating this family." I looked at the hand that had thrown Lily's swoon into a donation box. Then I adjusted my cuff and said, "Agree. Someone still has time." She did not understand what I meant. The hearing began on a gray Tuesday at the county courthouse. Daniel arrived in a navy suit carrying a new leather folder. Ruth wore Lily's pearl earrings, although she claimed later that she had borrowed them with permission. I sat beside Claire with Lily's pilot watch in my pocket and the old wooden spoon wrapped in a clean dish towel inside my bag. When the courtroom doors opened, Major General Ellen Cross entered in uniform, with an aide carrying a sealed Army file. Daniel's smile faltered, then returned. He still believed rank was ceremony and paperwork was something he could reshape. General Cross took the oath, placed the file before the judge, and opened it to the final page. Before reading, she looked directly at Daniel. Her voice was calm enough to make every chair seem louder when someone shifted. "Mr. Cole, can you explain how Lily signed the document you submitted 11 hours after the Army recorded her death?" Daniel's attorney turned toward him, and for the first time Daniel had no prepared answer. Daniel looked at his attorney, then at the judge, as if one of them might answer for him. Nobody did. The courtroom grew quiet enough for me to hear Ruth rubbing her thumb across Lily's pearl earring. Daniel finally said the timestamp must be wrong. General Cross closed the folder halfway and asked who had witnessed Lily sign his form. Daniel named no one. His attorney requested a short recess, but the judge refused until the document's chain of custody was clear. General Cross explained that Lily had appeared in person, shown military identification, and signed a final beneficiary designation before 2 witnesses. The form had been logged by the unit 12 days before the crash. Then, General Cross placed Daniel's version beside the official record. His document listed no witness identification numbers, no receiving officer, and no filing receipt. The signature had been copied from Lily's old vehicle contract. A forensic report showed the image pasted into the file after her death. Daniel's attorney stopped taking notes and moved his chair several inches away. The judge asked General Cross to read the valid designation aloud. My hand closed around Lily's pilot watch inside my pocket. I had imagined this moment during too many sleepless nights, yet when it came, I did not feel victorious. I felt like a mother waiting to hear her daughter's voice come through paper because it could never come through the telephone again. General Cross read that Lily left the house insurance benefits, savings, and authority over her estate to me. Lily had also written that Daniel was not to control any property because he had pressured her to pledge the house against his business debts. She confirmed that the decision was voluntary and made after independent legal guidance. The final page included a note in Lily's own hand. She wrote that a home should never become the price of keeping peace with someone who refuses to hear no. She asked that I use whatever remained to help military families protect themselves during loss. General Cross paused before reading Lily's last sentence, and I felt the watch face press against my palm. Ruth whispered that I had turned Lily against her family. The judge looked over the bench and asked whether Ruth considered Lily's own signed instructions an attack. Ruth's mouth opened, but no words came. The heating vent clicked beneath the windows, and one page trembled between her fingers, while everyone waited for an answer that never arrived. Daniel tried a different story. He said Lily had promised him the house verbally after filing the Army form. General Cross asked when that conversation happened. Daniel gave a date when Lily was training in another state. Claire produced flight records, lodging receipts, and the email where Daniel admitted Lily had never completed paperwork for him. The judge ruled that Daniel's designation had no legal value and that the official filing controlled the estate. She ordered the house returned immediately, froze the remaining transferred funds, and barred Daniel from managing any of Lily's property. She also referred the altered document and account transfers for investigation by the county prosecutor. Daniel lowered his head and stared at the false form, as though it had betrayed him. It had not. It had simply stopped protecting him. I watched his hands flatten against the table and remembered those same hands pushing a pen toward me after Lily's funeral. I felt no pleasure in his fear, only the deep exhaustion that comes when a truth finally finishes speaking. The lender withdrew the loan that Daniel had secured against the house. His freight company entered bankruptcy within 3 months, and the licensing board suspended him after reviewing the falsified records. $67,000 was traced through his business accounts. Some of it was recovered, though not all. Truth can return a name without returning every dollar. Ruth had 14 days to leave Lily's house. She packed the pearl earrings, but the court-appointed inventory officer found them in a jewelry case and returned them to me. I still have them. I could not tell you what shoes Ruth wore when she moved out, but I remember the sound of Lily's old wind chime after the front door finally closed. One neighbor brought back my key and admitted Daniel had told him I was too unstable to enter the property. Another relative called to say she had believed Ruth because Ruth spoke first and spoke loudly. I accepted both apologies without making either person comfortable. Regret deserves a hearing, but it does not automatically earn its old seat at the table. Daniel asked me to tell investigators that grief had caused a family misunderstanding. He said prison or prosecution would destroy what remained of his life. I told him I would not ask for cruelty, but I would not lie to protect him from facts he created. From that day forward, every message between us passed through Claire. Ruth sent a 6-page letter. The first 4 pages blamed Daniel Money and my military career. On the 5th page, she finally wrote that she had treated Lily's death as an opportunity. I did not invite her back into my life. I allowed her to send 1 letter each year unopened unless I chose otherwise. Forgiveness did not require access. 16 months later, I moved into Lily's house near Fort Campbell. I kept her bedroom simple and turned the garage into a free document clinic for military families facing loss. Once a week, I helped widows and parents organize forms before grief made every page look the same. General Cross visited on opening day and brought biscuits in a paper bag. The first woman who came to the clinic carried a grocery sack filled with unopened envelopes. We sorted them for nearly 3 hours while rain tapped the garage door. Before leaving, she said nobody had explained the forms without making her feel foolish. That evening, I understood why Lily had left me more than property. She had left me work worth continuing. The olive flight bag hangs beside the folded flag, and Lily's wooden spoon still rests in the crock near my stove. Outside the kitchen window, I planted a dark red rose that blooms later than the others. It does not hurry, and it does not apologize for its thorns. Grief can make a woman quiet, but quiet does not mean unprotected. So tonight, protect your name before someone asks you to surrender it in the language of family. Have you ever been used by someone who thought your pain made you weak? Tell me in the comments because your answer may help another woman recognize the same danger sooner. I would be honored if you shared this story and joined me again. May the truth guard your rest tonight.